Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and welcome to episode 99. I'm Rory, and what have we got on the menu today, Ken?
Such an exciting episode today, it really is. And a special number, 9999. What have we got? Well, we're going to be kicking off with speaking about friendships. Now, friendships with clients that we may have seen in therapy. After therapy maybe is finished, are we okay having those friendships? Is it ethically correct to do that? So we're going to be talking about that a bit. Then in Practice Matters, an interesting one today, appropriate dress for a counsellor. Rory, what can we expect from that?
Well, yes, I'm going to be exploring dress. I'm going to be speaking a little bit about my own experience of dress and just asking people to think about, I'm not going to be telling people how to dress, that would be completely wrong, but to think about what is appropriate dress for a counsellor. It's an interesting topic and one that's come up in our Facebook page. And if you don't know what our Facebook page is, if you're new to the podcast, if you go to Facebook, type in Counselling Tutor with two L's, you'll find our group. It's a closed group. Knock on the door and you'll come in and you'll meet 22,000 like-minded people. There's tutors, there's qualified practitioners, there's a whole host of students going through the training, and it's a really vibrant group. And this question came up in that group.
It did indeed. And another thing that came from our group that we're going to be discussing today, because all our topics are suggested by you, is progression routes. What happens? You know, you finish your studies, you qualify, you've got your piece of paper, you can now go out and practice. What does that look like? What routes are available for a qualified counsellor? But let's kick off speaking about friendships, Rory. Friendships of maybe, I guess there's two sides to this. It may be that a client that we've seen that later you're suggesting a friendship may start there, or maybe somebody who is a friend who says, can you counsel me?
Yes, it is a very, very tricky area. And it's one that I've thought of for a long time. And in fact, it's really interesting, isn't it, Ken? Because you were my student at one time. We met because I was your teacher, effectively, and now we've become friends and business partners. And I seem to remember we have to navigate pretty thoughtfully our relationship. And the reason for that is because obviously I'm privy to things that Ken spoke about in his personal development group. So as a consequence of that, it was a good few years actually before we met again and formed a relationship, wasn't it? I think you've been qualified
2011.
2011. So 2011 was it? Wow. Yeah. It was a good few years. And of course, I was in a friendship. We don't see each other on a regular basis. We live 40 miles apart, and it's a boundaried relationship, and that works very well. But I think that I think it's a different level when you're talking about clients. I really, really do, and let me tell you why. Because part of being a therapist is to have what's called a reparative relationship. Now, Patricia Clarkson talked about this. And what it basically means, reparative, means that there's a part of the relationship that's a reparenting style. So that you may be offering, certainly to clients who may have suffered neglect or abuse, a solid kind of person in the room. I always talk about saying to people, as you would a child that's been born, you're welcome here. You really are welcome. You deserve to be in the world. You're a person. And that is very much what a parent does or should do. And I think it could get really, really confusing if after therapy ends, then you form a relationship, because it may be that there's a massive power imbalance. We try and flatten it out, but it's always there. And I think it takes a lot of thought. And I think if a therapist is going to go into a friendship with a client, they need to have a long, hard think why that is. What is it in them that's been satisfied by having a relationship with a client?
It's such an interesting topic. I am impressed, Rory. This is our first podcast, if you're listening to them kind of in order and as they go out live. It's our first podcast of 2019. So it's been a full year, I would say, Rory, since you said the word transference. It was definitely last year. It's not really a full year, it's only last year. But if we look, Rory's laughing away at that because it's kind of a common theme if you're a regular listener. The transference is part of counselling. It's part of therapy, it kind of a vehicle that underlies the therapeutic process. So it will be present at some level within the therapy room. So if you then go on to become a friend with that person, what is that transference and how does that go forward? Who does that person really see you as? Who do you really see them as? And it becomes tricky because counselling, when you start your level 2, you learn what counselling is. And it's a very boundaried, contracted agreement where you meet at a certain time, at a certain place for one reason, and that reason is to benefit the client so that they can bring what they're bringing. And you exercise certain parameters, I guess. You work within certain boundaries and you are a certain way as a counsellor. You are there maybe exercising the conditions, the facilitative conditions for this client. Whereas outside of the counselling room, Rory, I don't know about you, but I don't walk around 100% of the time in using the old facilitative conditions non-stop. There are some times where I might be a bit judgmental and I might not have such unconditional positive regard when somebody pulls in front of me when I'm trying to get a parking space or something like that. So how does that translate from therapy room where you're being that way? Is it that they saw you as that person and now as a friendship? Are they still seeing you as that? It's very, very murky.
It is very murky. And also there's a danger, I think, that you might unpack the work that's been done. Because
yes,
it might be that the client goes away, they're okay in the world. It's the I'm okay, you're okay position, to borrow our term from our friends in the transactional analysis world. You might go away. And then if they start a relationship, they may see sides of you that they don't like. And it's the same in any relationship. Yep. I speak from my own experience that there are parts of people that you really wish they'd change, yep. And it may very well be that could impact on how you viewed the person who was your therapist. And that might then go on to impact on the therapy you've done. So I think it's a very, very, I'm not going to use the word dangerous. I'm going to use the word perilous. Perilous, because I think with peril, you need to manage it. And I think both of you would have to understand what you were going into. And in fact, the BACP do talk about relationships after therapy, and they do make reference to giving it a lot of thought. They don't say you can't do it, but giving it a lot of thought. And I did hear a few years ago of a trainer who got into a relationship with one of his students, and I often wondered what was going on there in terms of how that was managed. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I'm just saying that I was wondering how it was managed, because people will see their therapist in a certain light. They will hold on to them as a bit of a totem when things get bad, and think about the therapist sometimes. And you're absolutely right on transference, Ken. You're absolutely right, because it may very well be that if they see the whole of the person in front of them, in the warts and all, it might very well be that creates transference, and that could really impact the therapy. So I think it's about being thoughtful and asking self what need is being met by me by being friends with the next client.
And the thing with friendship is there's a choice involved. It's not like family where we don't have a choice. The family is family. With our friends, we get to choose. And as counsellors, that person may be a really great person. I've worked with amazing clients, Rory, incredible people that I guess, had we met in different circumstances, could have been deep and meaningful friends. But we didn't meet in different circumstances. And I think that we as the therapists, well, I can't speak for we as therapists. That's wrong. I'll speak as me as a therapist. I, as the therapist, need to hold those boundaries in service of my client. If there's anything that I can do that can unpack the therapy, as you mentioned, Rory, or cause confusion or clouding on the work that they have done or may continue to do, then I need to be mindful of that, because they came into my therapy room for a very specific purpose, and it wasn't to find a friend. It was to gain therapy. And it may be that I would need to sacrifice having someone who I think would be a great friend as a friend, and making those choices and maintaining, I guess, some level of professional boundary at the end of the therapeutic relationship.
Yeah, and I think it's one for personal therapy. I think if someone's drawn to a friendship with a former client, I think it really is one for own personal therapy to explore what that's about. Certainly one for supervision. Absolutely one for supervision. As a supervisor, I would want to hear that if one of my supervisees, and I would be asking a lot of very maybe probing questions as a supervisor. And I think definitely one for own personal therapy. It's not impossible. And on a final note, Ken, I would also say that if you've got a client who's come in with really historic neglect or abuse, and you start to befriend someone with that kind of a history, that could be a very dangerous road to go down.
100%, really it is. And kind of just to end this off, because in the preamble to this, one of the things I mentioned is a current friend that you may have who now finds out that you're a therapist and comes knocking on your door saying, oh, hello, would you be able to counsel me? I think this might be a shorter discussion, Rory, in that we just go, no.
Yes, yeah. Yes, I would refer everybody to a conversation I had with a student many years ago who said to me, if someone knocks on your door and wanted therapy from you, what would you say? And I said, well, I would point them in the direction of a therapist.
Yes.
And say, and if I was a friend, I might offer a listening ear, but be very clear that it would be as a friend, not as a therapist. And she said, I quote, I'm an awful person, uncaring and unkind. And her friend, who lives next door to her, is a therapist, and she would listen and counsel anybody who came to her door. And then in the next breath said, mind you, she's had a couple of nervous breakdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky area. So counselling someone you know, family members, that is really, I think, bordering on unethical. You wouldn't have to look far on the BACP website or phone their ethics department. They're going to advise you the same. It's just not a good idea at all. And friendships of past clients, again, tricky. But we want to hear your comments. So share your comments with us. Get onto that Facebook group. It's Counselling Tutor. Type that into Facebook. Go knock on the door. Join our group. Come and join tens of thousands of like-minded people. Share your comments on that. We'd love to hear that conversation. So moving on to Practice Matters. This is a part that we bring where Rory looks at an area of practice that really matters, because that's why we do the courses and that's why we counsel, so we can be in practice and be there with clients. And today you're talking about the dress, and this is appropriate dress of the counsellor, I gather. Yes,
it's something again that's come up in our Facebook group about what's the appropriate dress for a counsellor. And I certainly wouldn't tell people how to dress. I think that's certainly not my remit at all. But what I've done is I'm going to talk about just some observations of how the therapeutic relationship might be impacted by the way people dress, and how to be thoughtful of it. And some things that sometimes I gave an example, as you'll hear, of unintended consequences.
Looking forward to that one. That's Practice Matters with Rory after this very short message. Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Clothing and counselling. Recently, on a rare shopping trip to buy some new clothes, I was attracted to a nice polo shirt which looked very smart and was reasonably priced. Much to the bemusement of my wife, I put it back on the rack because I noticed it had a Guinness logo on the breast pocket. In my mind, I could see a conversation in my therapy room going along the lines of, I see you're wearing a Guinness shirt, is that your favourite drink? At which point, the therapeutic conversation moves away from the client's frame of reference and into mine. I also thought it may be insensitive to clients or supervisees who may be in recovery from addiction to blatantly advertise an alcoholic beverage in a therapeutic setting. You'll find that most agencies have a dress code. Find out what it is before you start seeing clients. It can save the embarrassment of someone taking you onto one side and having an awkward conversation. In the absence of a policy, just have a look at what other colleagues are wearing. And here are a few other observations on clothes. Dressing in your counselling clothes can cognitively put you in the right frame of mind for the work you're doing. Just like any other uniform, the clothes you wear can help reinforce what your role is. Try it, you may be surprised. Given that most courses ask for at least 100 counselling hours, it's not unusual for students to find themselves volunteering in agencies who offer free therapy to those who may struggle to pay privately. What message would it send out to a client on a limited income if their counsellor was dressed head to toe in Armani? How might that impact on the therapeutic relationship? The same thinking applies to clothes emblazoned with logos. Imagine a lifelong Manchester United fan sitting in front of a counsellor wearing a Manchester City t-shirt. If you wear a uniform as part of another job, change out of it. I once had a colleague who was a serving firefighter. Part of his uniform included black trousers and a white shirt with epaulets, not unlike the ones pilots would wear. He would remove his shoulder insignia and take off his name badge before seeing clients. He had a rude awakening when one of his clients disclosed that he felt uncomfortable speaking with an off-duty police officer. Being thoughtful about your clothing choice, which can, if not considered, impact on the therapeutic relationship.
Thank you as always, Rory. Always something to learn there. And appropriate dress, something really to consider. And if you want to get Rory's super duper handout, turbocharged, am I making it sound good, Rory? It is good, though. We have so many emails about Rory's handouts. You can get it. It is free of charge. Just go to our website. It's counsellingtutor.com. It's 2 L's because we're based in the UK in counselling. Counsellingtutor.com. Top of the website, there's a little tab that says podcasts. Click on podcasts because that's what you're listening to and go to episode 99. All the links from today's episode are on that page. A little bit of a condensed version. We call them show notes of what we've spoken about today. And right there from within that page, you can download Rory's super duper handout on appropriate dress as a counsellor in therapy. And that moves us, I guess, right on to our next topic, which is about progression. So we do these studies and we become a qualified counsellor at whatever level we are aiming at. What happens next? What are the progression opportunities? And I guess this is not just about, okay, I can now go into counselling. It might be that you've done a level 3, have some counselling skills. There are progression routes there as well.
Yeah, well, let's look at level 3. There'll be a lot of people listening to the podcast, maybe doing level 3, wondering what to do. And the question that comes up a lot is, do I do a level 4 or do I do a degree? Or if you're already a graduate, you could go on to do a master's. In some cases, you can get onto a master's course with a level 3, which is maybe surprising for some people, but you can. As long as you've got a certificate in counselling skills, you could actually do a master's. And I think the choice there is about what it is you want to achieve. By going on to a level 4, it's a craft-based endeavour. So a lot of it will be about learning the craft of counselling, perhaps not academically very high. It's about most of the NVQs, with our friends at CPCAB and ABC and BTEC and AIM and all those courses that you're probably on listening to this. They're all MVQs, and they're all basically evidencing competence. When you go to university to do a master's or a degree, then it's about that and evidencing academic competence as well. And the question that a lot of people ask, does it make me more employable if I've got a degree or a master's degree? And I'm going to be controversial here. And I don't want to knock anybody who's doing a master's or a degree. I think in some cases it may very well be, but I think that employers are looking for other things. That's my sense. I think that what they're looking for is a broad experience of working with a wide range of clients, and also competencies, certainly in areas of trauma-informed practice. That is something that is coming up time and time again. I recently completed a certificate in trauma-informed practice, and it has been absolutely useful, not useless, useful. I'm very careful here. Useful. It's been really useful. It's really good, and it would almost certainly, if I went out into the employment field now, make me more employable, because a lot of the presentations now that counsellors are seeing are trauma based. And here's the thing: a lot of the training that people do, certainly around person-centered, even CBT, doesn't really cover that in any great depth. So my view of it would be that anything you do, you really do need to think about trauma-informed practice.
So it's a really good point there, and it kind of points to CPD. So we're speaking about progression, and I mean, you don't have to go on a level 4 or go on to do a master's. If you just do a level 3, you can leave just with a level 3. You can't go on to do face-to-face counselling, but you can certainly use the skills that you take away from that. And there are so many opportunities out there. And I guess, I mean, you and I, Rory, have spoken about this many times before. It doesn't matter what job interview you're going for. If it's people-based, if there's going to be people around, if you're in a management position, whatever it may be, if you introduce a certificate that says that you have skills in counselling, in other words, relating to other human beings, it's going to be seen as an asset. It really is. It's CV gold having it. So you can take that and kind of use it in vocationally, I guess is the word. But if you do progress on and you do qualify, you do graduate, there are so many opportunities out there. And so often I think that there is a picture painted, oh, there's no work, oh, there's only badly paid work, oh, it's difficult to get a job as a counsellor, as a psychotherapist. And we've spoken about this before. If you've got that qualification and that willingness, that fire in the belly, and you don't, after 3 phone calls, go, okay, well, there's no work now, and you just keep on and keep on and keep on. Certainly my experience has shown that people that do that end up in a job they want to be in. And if you find yourself in a job or an agency where you don't want to be, continue looking until you find the right job. It's not about finding a job, it's about finding the right job, and they are out there. But Rory, you touched on such an important point there. It's about the CPD. It's about the learning you do outside of just your formal learning that are the assets. If you're going and working in an agency where their main customer is bereavement and loss, where the people are losing, like a charity, and you might be working there, and you walk in and you have done some CPD, some additional learning in working with grief, it may just give you that little edge over somebody who didn't.
Absolutely. And how many times do we get students who are members of the Counselling Study Resource or Academic Library saying to us, thank goodness that we offer CPD certificates for the lectures?
Yes. That's a big thing, because you could read about trauma-informed practice, as you were using as an example there, Rory. You can read many books on it and you can be well-versed in that. It's about evidencing it. It's about saying I read 3 books on that is very different to saying I've got a certificate here that says that evidences my learning in that. It is more accepted by employers, by placements, the certificate, just to kind of evidence that. And you're 100% right. If you are a member of the Counselling Study Resource, what is that? Well, it's the paid for part of Counselling Tutor. We put out a whole lot of free stuff, including this podcast, because we do want to make a difference. But Rory and I have to eat, and Rory also has to drink tea, apparently. So we have to get paid somehow. And the way we get paid is we started a paid for side of Counselling Tutor. And we have thousands of students that have been through our membership. And part of our membership is a lecture library, and within that lecture library there are over 50 hours of lectures, all linked to CPD certificates, and some of the lectures include working with clients who have experienced trauma, working with young people, working with bereavement, working with people who self-harm, working with people who may have a suicide presentation. These are the things that we kind of cover, the important topics, as well as more academic things like how to get through your assignments without the stress. But all of them are linked to CPD certificates. So you finish that lecture and then you can actually print out your CPD certificate from right there in the Counselling Study Resource. And more, Rory, I think that is being looked at and looked for out in the world when people are being considered for posts, for placements.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to interview trainees for placements when I worked for Mind, and one of the things that always impressed me was people who are doing learning outside of the curriculum. People, you say, well, what course are you doing? They say, well, I'm doing this, but also I've been doing this and this and this and this. And it just adds so much value to the person. You can't underestimate it. It's the same for placements, and it's also the same for employment. You know, I know a lot of people with a level 4 qualification, which is the level certainly in the UK where you could call yourself a qualified counsellor, level 4. And I know a lot of my students did extra learning, or former students did extra learning, and they've got jobs. In fact, you know, the amount of ex-students that I taught, and we taught, Ken, I've got jobs. They've got jobs in agencies, in the NHS. They're going to work in private practice. As you say, there is work out there. You just have to bring a lot of value to whoever, you know, if you're a private practitioner, to your clients, or if you're working for an agency, to your agency. It's about added. That's the thing. It's added value.
It is. And it's interesting because we're talking now about the usefulness of that additional learning and being able to evidence that with a certificate, which of course you can do through Counselling Study Resource, and what that means maybe to an employer, maybe to an agency if you're looking for a placement. But it also means so much to the practitioner, because I know from my own CPD, it's an ethical requirement. We have to do CPD. We have to keep up with what's happening. We have to keep up with the changing face of therapy. But my own experience shows me that if I do some CPD, usually there's one element of that CPD at least which finds its way into my practice. It becomes part of the way I am with my clients. So in a way, I benefit from that, because it informs my practice, and my clients benefit from that. And I guess it comes with the experience. The more experience you have, the more CPD you've done, and the more information you have to draw on, Rory. You're a walking encyclopedia, I've used that word from time to time, of information. A client can bring a presentation, and you have so much that you can go through and look at from the books you've read, the CPD you've done, to be able to be of best service to that client.
Absolutely. And I think what I would say is that we're living in a trauma-informed world. Absolutely. You know, a lot of the presentations, certainly from supervisees I work with and in my own practice, is informed by trauma, and we know so much more now. And also bereavement. You know, bereavement is a big area that I think goes untouched. I mean, you know, people talk about Kubler-Ross, you know, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and the stages of grief, but actually there's a whole lot more learning around grief, and I think it's really useful if people undertake separate CPD modules. As you say, we have those in the Counselling Study Resource, but it's about adding value, and I think it's also about servicing your clients. So my CPD and my progression has always been about what the clients have brought and where my gaps of knowledge are. I've always gone in the service of the client. You can't go wrong there.
I love that. It's the clients that teach us. It really, really is. We go to college, we go to university, we learn the theory, we learn how to use the skills, and then we go in front of our clients and they show us what we need to learn. They develop us as people. Isn't it wonderful? I love that transaction. I love that we are all, I guess, lifelong students of counselling, of therapy. This is episode 99 of the Counselling Tutor podcast. We kicked off today's episode speaking about friends with ex-clients. Went into practice with Practice Matters with Rory and spoke about appropriate dress. And then we're kind of finishing off today speaking about that progression. So you get your qualification. What happens next? Is there really any work out there? And just before we kind of sign off, this is, as I said, episode 99, which means only one thing, Rory. It means that next week is episode... Dun, 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 dun. That's Rory and my attempt at a fanfare. That was rubbish, Rory. We got to go back to fanfare school, me and you. It is episode 100. Please join us for episode 100, because we intend to kind of pull something special out of the bag for episode 100. Why? Well, because it's our 100th episode, and it kind of means something with getting close to I think it's over 500,000 downloads now. We're really appreciative of you, so we want to have a bit of a celebration. So we want to ask you a favour. Please, can you tell your colleagues, your friends that may be on a counselling course with you about the Counselling Tutor podcast, because we want to have a lot of ears on our 100th episode, because we're excited and we want you to be excited too.
Yeah, and hey, stay grounded and stay safe.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. Counselling Study Resource, or CSR for short, is the world's most comprehensive assignment guidance and study support resource for students just like you of counselling and psychotherapy. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.